For the first time ever, a parent has been convicted in a mass school shooting. Jennifer Crumbley today was found guilty on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Her teenage son, Ethan, killed 4 students, Madison Baldwin, Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling, and injured 7 others in 2021 at Oxford High School in Michigan. The gunman was sentenced to life in prison without parole back in December. His mother now faces up to 60 years in prison and will be sentenced in April. For more on the verdict and broader legal questions, we turn to Ekow Yankah, law professor at the University of Michigan. Thank you for being back with us. And Jennifer Crumbley told jurors that it was her husband's responsibility to keep track of the gun. She said she saw no signs of mental distress in her son. How were the prosecutors able to convince the jury that her behavior crossed the line into recklessness, a conscious disregard, and ultimately involuntary manslaughter?
You're right that she, in some ways, tried to blame what we call the empty chair, that is, point at a defendant who's not around. And perhaps that's not surprising. You know, the trial of the Crumbleys was meant to be a joint trial and was separated at the last moment. So many of us speculated that there had been some legal questions where one of them thought the other could be held more liable or be painted in a worse light. Ultimately, though, what Jennifer just couldn't convince the jury of is that even given the legal principle that you're not responsible for someone else's acts, when she had so many years of notice, so many troubling moments, so many really damning facts, when she walked out of that schoolhouse, knowing that her son had a gun and having had administrators ask her if she wanted to take him home, that she could not have intervened somewhere along the way and saved 4 lives and saved 7 others from injury.
The Crumbleys are the first parents in U.S. history to stand trial for a mass school shooting. James Crumbley, Jennifer's husband, will be tried on the same charges next month. What precedent does her conviction set?
I think we want to look at the specific and the general. Certainly for him, this is as big a punch to the gut as you can imagine. Obviously, not just because his wife has been convicted, but given the closeness of the facts, it's ominous for his legal chances. Indeed, I'll be interested to see whether or not he still decides to go to trial. If he decides that there are some facts that are sufficiently distinguishing that he isn't looking at the same thing. Obviously, different case, different jury, but pretty close facts. For people more generally, though, this case both underscores how really troubling these facts were, but also underscores how really worrying it might be for any set of parents. The parent who's working hard to keep their son out of gang violence or keep their son who's struggling with drugs or alcohol from taking a joyride. And how that's going to play out once prosecutors have this new tool is something that I think the defense really hoped that juries would hold on to. And lastly, I want to point out that there are going to be some people who are convicted that we never hear of, people who, with this precedent facing them, would rather plead to a lesser charge now that prosecutors have this new tool in their arsenal.
Let's hear from Craig Schilling. He's the father of one of the victims, Justin Schilling, and he spoke to reporters after the verdict came in.
Do your due diligence with your child. It is your choice to have a child, and you cannot choose to not take care of your child. You cannot choose to not nurture your child. You cannot choose to take your own interest over your child, especially when it comes to mental health.
So it raises the question of what you just spoke to earlier, what this means for parents. I guess, rephrase the question, what does this mean for gun-owning parents in particular?
Yeah, I mean, part of what's going on here is our deep divide in the country about the role guns play in our lives. I think there's some set of families that heard you bought him a gun for an early Christmas gift, especially a young man who's been struggling with mental health issues, and you didn't keep it under lock and key. That, for some families, is shocking. Indeed, it led to Michigan passing new laws about gun storage. For other people, guns are much more a part of their lives. Guns are kind of part of the background firmament, and it's frankly not unheard of or even unusual to get your kid their first gun. I think we as a country are going to have to really wrestle with how ordinary we see guns. And certainly parents who now think a gun is just part of their culture and their life have to think about whether or not they have been sufficiently careful about the way their child can access that gun, especially as the child gets older.
And this case also represents an effort to widen the scope of blame and responsibility for mass shootings. What other implications might that have? We saw recently an effort to file lawsuits against gun manufacturers in this country.
Yeah, those have been long-going lawsuits, although every time there's a really visible event, we wrestle with the question anew. I think you're right. As much as we wrestle with these cases in the individual, and though this conviction is unprecedented, there have been a few smaller instances of parents pleading guilty to negligence when they left a gun around. I think you're right that these school shootings are so much a heartbreaking part of our everyday American experience. And frankly, they're going to make prosecutors both angry and perhaps see an opening to either litigate, find somebody who's guilty, and you might even think in the worst cases for them to make themselves known in their community for career reasons.
Eko Yanka is a law professor at the University of Michigan. Thanks so much for your insights.
Thank you for having me.